Hi all. Today let's take a look at a new feature that has been introduced in Angular 14, that is the standalone components. So this feature has been introduced as a developer preview, so it is not finalized and is not stable. The introduction of standalone components is basically the starting point of making the ng module, which you will be familiar, as an optional item. So currently the ng module is mandatory, and in case we need to make use of a component or a directive or a pipe, we need to declare it within the ng module unless it is a dynamic component or something. And that too, even in case of dynamic components, unless it is very simple, we will not be able to make use of them. So here I have an Angular 14 application in which I am making use of the normal ng modules, and this application consists of a login page, and when we click on the sign in, it will be redirected to a different route, that is the home. And within this, we are lazy loading another component, that is the additional info. So now let's convert this application step by step into a standalone component application. So first, let's start with the app component. For converting a normal Angular component into a standalone component, we just need to add the flag standalone and make it as true within the component decorator. So once we have done that, this particular component is a standalone component. Now if you go to our build, you can see that it has failed, and you cannot provide a standalone component within an ng module declaration. So in case you give that, it will be throwing an error. So now let's remove the app component from our app module. So once we have done that, you can see that another error is being thrown, that is the router outlet, which we are using within our app component. So as you know, the router outlet comes from within the router module, which is being consumed within the app routing module. So in our app module, we were previously importing this app routing module, and as a result, we were able to make use of the router outlet within our app component.html. So now, since we have removed the app module itself, the standalone component provides an option where we can define all its dependencies. It can either be an ng module, or it can be another component, directive, or pipe. The only thing that needs to be taken care is that these components, directives, and pipes should be standalone. So here we can add the imports, and here I am going to add the app routing module as a dependency. So once we have done that, our application builds successfully, but if you go to the console, you can see that an error is thrown that the app module was bootstrapped. So if you go here in our main.ts, that is our entry point, you will be familiar with this code that we are bootstrapping our app module. So now, since we do not have any declaration or any components declared within the app module, it is failing. So the entry point of our application is ideally the standalone component, app component. So now let's see how we can bootstrap a standalone component. Let's go to the main.ts and comment out this line. And instead of that, we have a new function called bootstrapApplication, which accepts a standalone component. So in our case, we can pass the app component, and we can remove the unwanted imports. Now you can see that the console error is gone, but still no view is being rendered. So why this is happening is because within our app routing module, we are making use of the router module.forRoute, where we are defining the routes for our application. So this is the routes array in which for the login route, that is our current route, we are defining that it is the login component which needs to be displayed. So since the information of the route is contained within a service, it is not available when we inject it into our app component. So here what we need to do is that we can move this routes information to our main.ts. So I am pasting it here, and here let's import our login component, the routes definition, and the path will be different here. So app home module. So the errors are gone, and the particular line where we define the routes, that is the for route, we can copy this over here, and within our bootstrap application we can pass a configuration object where we can define the providers array, and within this providers array we can call a function called importProvidersFrom, and within this function we can pass our router module dot for route along with our routes. So once we have done that, all the services from within this router module or any module which we provide here, it will be available within our standalone component. So now you can see that this is throwing error, so we can remove this from our routing module, app routing module. So now you can see that our login component is getting rendered here, and we are able to run our application successfully. So effectively we have totally removed the dependency for our app module.ts. So we can safely remove this from our application and still it runs successfully. Now let's go to the next step, that is let us try to remove the app routing module. So here you can see that we have a declaration that for the login component. So the first thing we need to do is that we need to convert the login component into a standalone. So here you can just add this flag and go to the routing module and remove the declaration. Now what happened is that since we removed it from the declaration here, the dependencies which we have defined here, we need to provide within our login component. So here we can add the imports, and I have added the forms module. So our login component is getting displayed now. Now let's go back to our app routing module and let's try to remove this, and from our app component as well, let's remove the dependency. So now what happened is that again the router outlet error is coming because it is not being identified. So we can directly add the router module here. So once we add that, our application will work as expected. So now we have totally removed the app module as well as the app routing module from our application. So the next screen that is available within our application is the home route, where we are showing our home component through the home module. So the route definition, as we saw, we are providing here within our main.ts, and you can see that we are actually making use of lazy loading to load the home module. So now let's see whether we can remove this home module and still achieve the lazy loading through some other methods. So here within the home module, we have the home routing module, the common module, and some other dependencies, and we have the home component. Now let's try to convert this home component into a standalone. So I have made it a standalone component and removed it from our declarations. Now what happened is that again the dependencies which we have defined here, we need to give here within our home component. So here again we have the ngIf, that is the common module. So let's import that as well. So now our application is loading, but still we are lazy loading our home module. So let's try to remove this. And in Angular 14, what they have done is, instead of the home module, the ng module, we can dynamically import the routes as well. So what we can do is, we have our home routing module. So what I'm going to do is, I am going to remove this ng module dependency from within the home routing module. And here we have our routes which are available for our child module. So here I am going to export this, and within this we have defined the home component as the child. So let's import this home routing module, and from there we can make use of the routes. So now let's restart our application. So once the application is restarted, the error has gone away. And if you see within our load children, here we are actually dynamically importing the routes instead of the ng module. So this is a new syntax that is being introduced as part of the standalone. So now if we refresh our application and go to the home page, you can see that the home route is getting loaded. So this is one way in which you can load the home or the standalone modules. Another way is that there is a new method called loadComponent, and here we can directly load the component itself. So we have the home component, which is a standalone component, and from there we can directly load the home component and it will have the same effect. So we can just rename this file as home routes so that we can avoid any confusion, and the reference within our main.ts as well, I have renamed it. So now the only two modules which we have within our application is the loader module and the addition info module. So first let us go to the addition info component that is present within the module and make it as a standalone. So once we have done that, we can remove it from our declarations. Let's remove the module as well. So this addition info module we are trying to load within our home component. So now what we can do is that here we were making use of the dynamic import to load the module. Now we can remove that and make use of the standalone component. So we will load that component, and from that we will get the standalone component. So now we get the error related to the common module. So we can add that within our imports for the additional component. So once we do that, our application will be loading like previously. So the last module that is existing within our application is the loader module. So where we have the loader directive declared. So similar to the components, the directives as well as pipes also have the standalone flag. We can enable that and then remove it from our dependencies. That's a declaration. So here I am going to delete the loader module itself. So now we are getting an error from the home So let's go to the home page. And here in the imports, actually we are loading the loader module. So I am going to remove that. And instead of the loader module, we will be taking care of the loader directive itself. So the name is lazy loader directive. So since it is a standalone directive, we can import it directly within our imports. So unless it is a standalone directive or component or pipe, we cannot use it in the imports. So we can remove the unused imports as well. So now again our page is working as expected. So we have removed all the ng modules which are available within our application, and now we are making use of pure standalone components, directives and pipes within our application. So now one final thing we will look is that another feature that has been introduced as part of the standalone is that we can define providers as part of the routes. So here within our application, you can see that when we come to the home route, we make use of the loader service. That is within our loader directive, we inject the loader service and we effectively make use of that only within the home route. So as part of the route definition which we gave here in the main.ts, so I will comment this and uncomment this, and either way you can give it here or you can provide it here. Both places it is accepted. So here there is an option called providers, and here we can add our loader service. So the meaning of this is that this service will be available only during this particular route. Other than this route, it won't be available anywhere. So let's try this out. Let's go to our loader service. In the constructor, I am adding a console log. I am adding loader service created. Now we are on the login page. We logged into the home, and when we finally click on show addition info, the loader service is created. Now let's do one thing. Let's try to inject this loader service within our login component. So in the login component, I am injecting the loader service. And now let's go to our login component and see. So what happened is that you can see that the loader service is throwing a no provider for loader service error since we are currently in the login route. But once we go to the home route, you can see that the loader service is available. So this is the new feature that was introduced in Angular 14, so that we can scope the providers based on the route. One final thing that is modified in the standalone component design is that the ng modules will slowly be removed. So since the ng module has been made optional, previously we had two type of injectors, that is the module injectors and the node injectors. The node injectors is basically which consist of the providers which we define in the components, directives and all those kind of things. And the module injectors were the ones which used to be created when we give the provider in root or when we define it within our ngModule.providers. So now since the ng module is optional, they have renamed that concept, that is module injector, to something called environment injectors. So it's basically the same thing. So as part of that, they have also added a new token which we can define within 4 places within our Angular application. One is the bootstrap application, where we bootstrap our root standalone component. So here we can use the provide. We have a token called environmentInitializer, and this is the syntax. It is a multi value. So here I am going to log some message that environmentInitializer in main.ts. This is similar to the ngModule constructor, so that when a new ngModule is created, the constructor logic will be executed. So similar to that, whenever a new environment is initialized, this particular environment initializer will be run. So if you refresh our application, we can see that our console message is getting logged here. So this is in the bootstrap of our application. The same thing we can do in 3 more places. One is within the ngModule providers. So since we don't have any ngModule, I am not going to show that. Another place is the route which we saw earlier. So here, when we go to the home route, we are giving the loader service. So similarly, we can provide our environment initializer as well. So here I am giving it as routes. So let's go to the login. So let us remove our injector. So here we had injected the login service. So I am removing that. So now you can see that our main.ts initializer as well as the routes initializer is getting displayed. Similarly, we have one more place we can make use of the environment initializer. So let's go to the home component, and within the constructor for home component, I am going to call a new function that was created, that is the createEnvironmentInjector that was introduced in Angular 14. So here again we can provide a list of providers, and here also we will be able to give the environment initializer, and here I am going to change the message as home component. So when we refresh, you can see that the main.ts and the routes have been displayed. But when we go to our home component, at that time the home component initializer is also executed. So this is another feature that is introduced as part of the standalone component design. So hope you are able to get a good idea about standalone components, directives and pipes. See you soon. Thank you.